Amazing. Well, welcome to back to Twerkwerk with
Yeah.
Adam.
And Zoe!
Yay! So today we really wanted to talk about the 4 core values of Twerkwerk, but also the origins of Twerkwerk, because I feel like with any sort of medicine that we venture on, it's really important that we
Honour and respect where it kind of stemmed from, the roots and everything like that.
Absolutely, yes. So we're going to start off by talking about a little bit about the roots, how twerking came to be such this sort of like big thing within Western culture, and then we're going to talk about the 4 core values of twerkwerk. So we'll start off with the origins. The origins of twerking coming from West Africa. They actually used a lot of twerking as a way to bring joy. They found that the movement of your hips, that bump, that grind, which we'll get into a little bit later, but that bump, that grind, the way that you move in that context brought a lot of joy. And it created a lot of joy within communities. So twerking was not just a sort of solo activity or movement that you did by yourself, but rather a movement that you also did within communities, and you'll see it in a lot of South American cultures as well, as they do a lot of moving, they do a lot of twerking, they do a lot of samba, salsa on the streets. They do it like from the moment of birth. And so in African culture, especially West African culture where it originated, this was a huge thing for them, and it was actually used, and I don't know if you knew this, but it was actually used in a lot of weddings.
Oh, I didn't actually know that. That's really cool. Yeah.
So twerking was actually something that was done at a lot of weddings. It was done as a form of celebration.
Yeah.
So that's like a key element to twerkwerk in itself. Is like, how do we celebrate ourselves? How do we celebrate the people around us who are twerkwerking with us? How do we celebrate our bodies? How do we
lift the community?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it really plays into that celebration piece, that joy piece in which twerking really started from. And so we see twerkwerk as a form of celebration in every moment, and twerking, if you take it out of the context in which you reframe, you shift how your belief may be in and around twerking currently, which we'll get into as well. See it as a celebratory act.
Yeah.
See it as a celebratory movement. See it as a way to increase and bring joy into your life. So that's a lot of the origins. Obviously, there's more to that, and that is something that can 100% be researched. But where did it end up coming into our sort of Western culture, right? Because like we see twerking being on a lot of movies, we see video clips. It's like become this quite a big thing in like today's society. Well, twerking came into the bounce movement in the 1980s over in New Orleans. And so the bounce movement was like a form of movement that incorporated what we call now twerking. And that's its kind of introduction into American culture. That's its introduction into a more sort of Western society. Bounce movement started in the 1980s, and it's kind of progressed since there, where we've taken it and we've brought it around all of these other countries, and we've gone, how do we use this movement, and what does this mean about us, right? And maybe you know a lot about kind of a bumping and grinding. It's one of your practices, and maybe you can talk about this. But part of the reason, and this is just only one reason in which twerking has almost become sexualized, is because it looked like the bump and grind movements that was used by quote unquote strippers, which
stemmed from burlesque,
which
bumps
maybe
grinds,
you can talk about, and then we can get into this why all of a sudden we have a problem with it when it's got to associate with.
You can really kind of just you saying that you can kind of see where the cross wires could have formed or be adapted within people's thoughts and the way that it was introduced, I guess, right?
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about bumps and grinds?
Yeah, bumps and grinds is a known classic move in the art form of burlesque. And they used bumps and grinds it was in a sense to elevate with the music. So the music back then had a lot of like trumpets and really dominant sounds, and the ladies or the burlesque performers would use bumps, so like sharper hits, and then grinds to go with the different instruments, which is really fun. But when you were speaking, just to track back to when you were speaking about twerking and the movement that was formed, I imagine the music back then, that would kind of what would bring forward. So I think a lot of music and dance are just encouraged and birthed at the same time, because however the music is feeling and what that's bringing through the body evolves into this embodiment, right, and this vibration and this feeling. And so that's where those bumps and grinds kind of came through. They were used in, like, I like to say, like more of like a tasteful, classy way than a stripper. And I think that's a whole nother conversation to go into burlesque and stripping. But yeah, that's a little bit about the bumps and grinds in the art form of it and the beauty of it. But it's about showing and being comfortable and honouring your parts of the body that you can bump and grind. And it's taking that control and honouring that beauty of it.
Yeah. Have you found within that bump and grind there's been like a lot of judgment and shame projected?
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that's when the crosswires of the stripping comes through, and just what people have been told. But deep in the world and what I believe in, I don't let that kind of come up for me. And you know, that just comes around to what your beliefs are, what your values are, what you see in front of you, and what you take from that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting looking at the bumps and grinds, the movement of twerking, and the shame that has been almost projected into movements and forms of movements like this. Now, I want to just clarify that when I speak about twerking moving into more of a Western culture, it's not that there are not people of color within that Western culture. I'm talking about a colonized Western culture. I'm talking about a culture which is specifically being colonized by white people. And then this form of movement and this form of twerking being shamed and being like sexualized in some context, because it is a sexual movement. It is a sexual movement. It is a sensual movement. It is a movement of liberation. It is a movement of joy. It is a movement of celebration. It's a movement of expression. And where you can see that a lot of the shame has been brought into this movement, because obviously in places like West Africa and places like South America, in a lot of indigenous culture, there's no shame to these movements at all.
No.
So where did the shame come from? And this is why I talk about a Western colonized society, is because it comes from patriarchy. In a patriarchal society where it's been that men have been elevated and seen as, and part of a patriarchal model is a hierarchical model, right? So who's at the top, who's in power, who's up here, who gets to tell you what to do, who sets the standards, who sets the rules, all of that. And you know who's that been? White, straight men, right? And that's just simple facts. There's nothing to argue about that. That's just simple facts. And it actually, when you look at patriarchy, the thing which is first classified is sex. The second thing is race.
Yeah.
And the third thing is socio-economic status. So men being the preferred or dominant sex, white being the dominant race, and then rich, money being the predominant socio-economic thing. So if you think about it in that context, woman underneath, woman of colour underneath, poor woman of colour right down the bottom there. We can see that rampant within fucking our society and how everything has shown up. And so twerking, and then the evolution of twerking and how it's been sort of shamed, comes from the fact that it's an internal and external patriarchal system that shames women for the way that they express and move themselves, especially women of colour. But any woman that expresses and moves themselves in a feminine way, in a way that could be perceived by a man as sexual, as sensual, sorry, I can't handle that. Your expression is too much for me. That's not okay. Let's shut this down.
It's like expressing more in tune within your body, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being in tune with your body, being within that feminine. And when I talk about feminine, I talk about the fact that all of us have a feminine and a masculine within us. But I talk about the feminine being the body, right? The masculine is the mind, the feminine is the body. Even if you look at our culture, we're so oriented around IQ, intellectual intelligence, and achieving over feeling into our body. So that feminine, that expression within your movements of your body has been too much for the patriarchy. Let us shut it down. Comes from the Roman times, Roman Catholicism, all of that. Let's shut it down. This is not okay. But it's been brought, how has it gone from this joyful celebration within Africa, within West Africa, to America bounce movement, to colonized civilizations where it's been shamed? Well, that's how.
Yeah.
That's how. And so we're sitting here going, oh, twerking's really sexual. Well, yes, in some regards it is. But also, why is there shame around that? And this is really important for us to understand, and that's why I really wanted to come on here and speak to you all as twerk workers of the origins of not only twerking, but the origins of our shame around movement.
Yeah.
And this leads into our first core, our first core value is community. So you can see how community is vital and part of twerk work, is vital and part of how we express ourselves, how we liberate ourselves, how we honor our bodies. It's been used in community, it's been used in celebration. And even here on this platform, as you move your body in the safety of your own home, the comfort of your own home, we invite you as a community to still celebrate you. So we do say, and we encourage that if you are doing these movements at home and you're feeling this way, share it with us.
Yeah.
Write it in the comments. Send it to our Instagram. Record yourself, send it through, add it to your stories. We want to celebrate you. We want to put it up there. We want to be this community that is celebratory of your movements of twerking. And so that's our first core value. Our second core value is expression. Why expression? Well, just like I expressed, it's because it's been broken down through our external and internal patriarchal system, is the fact that we haven't been able to express and liberate ourselves, but for the most part, women and women of colour. So how for you does twerking and dance allow for this expression?
It's an invitation, really, to express, and especially in that safe setting, and you're comfortable and you're surrounded by like-minded souls with no shame, no judgment, it's that invitation to express and lean into it and go on this journey to connect and be in tune with yourself. You know, I think that's so important. Just helping you just an overall embody and navigate and kind of stand more as yourself and your possibilities. You know, it's an invitation of like limitless potential.
Yeah. And expression is an invitation to break down, and I'll refer to it again, but to break down that internal patriarchal system.
Yeah.
Expression is a way that in which has been suppressed for us through our voice, through our movement. You know, they say that the easiest way to control someone is to shut down their voice, right? So even in the form of expression through our voice, which we love doing here in Twerkwerk, you'll hear it. You will hear us be like, get it! Like, we're always celebrating. We're always like...
Just even with the breath, it's letting it come through. It's opening the channels to come through.
That expression of breath, that expression of movement, that expression of sound, inviting that in so we can break that down, and we can break down the layers of like the shame and the guilt and the non-acceptance and the judgment and all of those
just
things.
Coming back to you, letting go of everything that's being put on or has tried to put on or suppress. Like, it's just me.
Yes, and it is. Our third core value that we want to speak about is liberation or self-liberation, and how we get to liberate ourselves through our movement, especially liberating our bodies, right? So that's really important. I will talk about the breath, you can talk about the body. Liberating ourselves through the breath in Twerkwerk is so important. Liberating our nervous systems. Now, that's not something that you'll probably hear a lot about, but how do we liberate our nervous systems? Well, we are raised in a society of a hustle culture.
Yeah.
We're in a hustle culture. Pressure, time limits, demands, all of these things in which we have to get done, show up for, like constant stresses. We walk out into the street, and our brain and our body is navigating and assessing everything around us, right? Yeah. And is this a threat? Is this a threat? Is this a threat? And so liberating our nervous systems through the breath means both tapping into that parasympathetic state, tapping into that state of rest, of digest, of fully allowing for ourselves to feel safe within our own skin, feel safe within our body through regulating and down regulating our nervous system. So just simple breaths like in and out through the nose, especially long exhales through the nose, can really encourage relaxation.
Yeah.
Activating our sympathetic nervous state when we are doing it, when we're in control, and this goes into liberation again, right? Like our own liberation. I'm in control here. I'm the one doing this. When we can activate that sympathetic state within ourselves, we're creating adrenaline and epinephrine. And adrenaline and epinephrine is not a bad thing. In our sympathetic state, especially more so when created by ourselves. If it's created by an external context, someone running towards us and we're getting a fright and that adrenaline and we want to run, that's not the adrenaline I'm talking about. I'm talking about the adrenaline that we create through certain breath, through
more of like on a positive side.
And a positive side, like that circular breath helps us to build stress resilience. In a society filled with stress, it's not about trying to get rid of the stress. It's often coping. About how we build resilience to the stresses, right? How do we be more responsive? And through this particular breath work, we're self-liberating our nervous system into being able to respond more accordingly.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Like, sorry, it needs a moment. Amazing.
How do we feel about
Movement.
liberation in the body and
Yeah.
through movement?
I think it's really important to recognize, like, this is your vessel, this is your temple, you know, and I think there's like a blockage for some people for that, you know, with a lot of shaming in the body and not aware or even connected in the body, you know, and if there's areas that you don't like, and whether that's you or someone else has projected that onto you, you hold on to that and you kind of stop being you and you get disassociated. There we go. With your body, you know, and whether that's your stomach or your arms or your back, like those areas just are no love. And how are you honoring your temple, your vessel, right? Like, say if you had this really nice car, you would take care of that car, right? This body is your vehicle. So how do you want to honor it and take care of it, just like you would for any other material item that you love and appreciate, you know? So it's kind of coming back in tune with the body. It's feeling what's on offer, and it's giving that body love, appreciation, lifting it up, like getting that connection, building that relationship, having that conversation through movement, and seeing it, witnessing it, feeling it all, understanding, and just loving and lifting yourself up, and being surrounded by others in that environment adds to it, it complements it, it helps you and it helps them, and it's just beautiful, like give and pull. I think it's really important that, you know, we honor our body and we give it love, and for whatever it's been through, you know.
Yes. Our fourth core value at Twerkwerk is confidence. And Zoe, you know a thing or two about confidence, and especially around confidence of the body, but confidence of the mind, confidence of you and thoughts, beliefs, and how confidence plays into self-love as well. Do you want to roll the ball?
Yeah, so confidence, you know, like I said about talking and coming into the body, the more that you're into the body and you understand that lifts up your confidence. It's building that more positive pattern in your thoughts, and especially if we allow that movement, right, to move through and express through our body, we're not holding it. If we hold it and we think about the body, we're going to bring it in. We're going to be stiff. We're not going to be able to think clearly. If we come into our body and we create a flow, we can then control, you know, the thoughts and that positive energy that we want to create. And if we do hear something that we don't quite like, we can shake it all about. We're in control. We're in that flow. We are riding the wave that we choose to. We're navigating our way through. So confidence is very important for our self-love, our self-appreciation. And it gives us that permission slip within ourselves to be like, no, I do have this. I am confident. I feel good doing this, and I'm going to honor that, you know?
Yeah. And one thing that you said is shake it off, right? And in Twerkwerk, this is a practice that we invite. We invite the practice of shaking it off. Whether or not it's stress, that you've had a stressful day and you come home and you shake it off. Whether or not your friend or your family members annoyed you and you go and you just shake it off. Whether or not you feel reactive and you shake it off. We invite the practice of shaking. And the practice of shaking, we are, if not the only species in the world that does not have the practice of shaking it off when it comes to our fight, flight, fawn, or freeze response.
Yeah.
Our sympathetic response, our threat response that I was speaking about. We're the only species that doesn't have this
Yeah.
shake it off movement. And so
It gets stuck.
it gets stuck. And this is how it gets stuck, not just within our brain, but within our body, is because we're not shaking it off. So at Twerkwerk, the confidence is built through actually shaking off old beliefs, shaking off quote unquote, I know it's a heavy word, but trauma.
Yeah.
You know, shaking off just things which no longer serve us, whatever that looks like, is actually exploring that within the body and allowing ourselves to shake it off. Encompassed with that breath, it's helping to regulate our nervous system and come into safety within our body. When we're in safety within our body, we tend to feel more confident within our being. Confidence comes from self-validation, right? And self-validation comes from the connection to our being. When we are so deeply connected to our being able to let go of those things that we've been told, or those patterns, or those beliefs in which we've adopted, through undulating, through shaking, through bumps and grinds, through all of these movements, then we are self-validating our place within this world without needing that from other people. Yes, sure, it's great and okay to get validation from others, but with the intention of what, right? We need to have our own backs. How do we do that? We do that through knowing ourselves better. Yes. So we are so excited to have you here at Twerkwerk. I know this has been a journey of just exploring so many facets of history, facets of values, facets of body movement, touch, sensory experience. And we're just excited. We're just excited to explore with you. We really wanted to give you some in-depth sort of insight.
Get inside our minds a little bit about like, where this energy is building and coming from. And
and just coming back to ourselves and coming back to community. We can't wait to shake with you. Have an amazing day.
Yay!